Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything. An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod, a phone. Are you getting it? These are not three separate devices. Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone.
To say the market for iPhones has changed in the last several years would be quite an understatement. But it didn't always used to be like that. Apple used to just make one new iPhone each year. But starting in 2014, Apple announced they would be making not one but two flagship smartphones, the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus, to keep up with the competitors like HTC, LG, and Samsung. Then as time went on, they kept adding to the lineup. In 2017, they announced the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus alongside the iPhone 10. Then the next year they had the iPhone XR with the XS and XS Max. And then the next year they settled on the format we're now kind of familiar with the iPhone 11, 11 Pro, and 11 Pro Max. Then in 2020 they added a fourth phone to the lineup with iPhone 12 mini, and then 2 years later replaced that with the iPhone 14 Plus. All that to say, for someone who might not have looked at the phone market since they got their iPhone 7, it might be a bit overwhelming to try and pick a phone. So hopefully with this video, you'll be able to decide which features matter to you most, and therefore which phone will fit you best. Phones are a little more tricky than something like a laptop because I can't just make one all-encompassing recommendation for a single product that'll fit everyone, because everyone's different. But what I can do is I can go through all the best value iPhones, I can go over their features to see which features matter to you most. And to do that, I've made this chart. I've listed every iPhone that Apple currently sells on their website, with the addition of the iPhone 11 lineup with the iPhone XS and the iPhone SE. To reduce manufacturing costs, Apple used the exact same chassis design from the iPhone 8, which makes it very popular with people who prefer Touch ID to Face ID. It's got the same 4.7-inch LCD screen as the iPhone 8, the same single camera unit, the same battery, pretty much everything is the same except it did get an upgraded A15 Bionic processor. It's the cheapest phone on this list. It costs $189 if you get it pre-owned and certified, and you really do get a lot of phone for that price. The one primary drawback of the iPhone SE is its battery life. It got the same battery as the iPhone 8, but because of that more powerful A15 Bionic processor, it just draws more power than it really has there to supply, so its long-term battery life really isn't great. But apart from that, it really is a pretty solid phone for the price. Next is the iPhone XS. It's a $100 bump from the iPhone SE, but you get a lot with that upgrade. The screen upgrades from an LCD to an OLED and goes from 4.7 to 5.8 inches. In case you don't know why OLED is better, with an LCD you have to have one solid backlight that lights up the whole screen, whereas with OLED every single pixel individually lights itself. That's why with an LCD, even with a black screen, you can still see kind of a purple glow, whereas on an OLED, wherever the screen is black, that screen is actually turned off. The OLED on the iPhone XS is also significantly brighter, so it's a lot easier to use in daylight. It does only have an A12 Bionic processor, so it's a little bit slower, but that does mean you get way better battery life at 9.5 hours. The cameras are quite good on the iPhone XS as well, because it does have that extra 2x zoom lens, which is why I usually recommend the iPhone XS to anyone who is trying to keep their phone as cheap as possible, but they also really need to be able to zoom in 2x without losing much quality. The iPhone 11 is without a doubt the most widely owned iPhone on the list, and it's actually the best-selling iPhone of all time with the exception of the iPhone 6. It was such a huge hit because, well, it kind of just had a bit of everything. When it first came out, it boasted 10 hours of battery life, which was the longest battery ever in an iPhone at the time. It has a great 6-inch LCD display, which was the best LCD Apple ever put in an iPhone before they converted completely to OLED with iPhone 12. But one of the biggest draws to the iPhone 11 was actually the new ultra-wide camera, which allows for much more flexibility with taking photos. But most importantly, it means you can do this. The iPhone 11 goes for $419 right now, and it's a pretty good middle ground phone with a pretty unbeatable price. The iPhone 12 has all the benefits of the iPhone 11, but it feels a whole lot more modern, partially because of its much brighter 800 nit display as opposed to the iPhone 11's 625 nit display. And because of that, it's way easier to see in daylight and therefore much better for taking photos and videos. Another benefit of the flat edge design is that screen protectors are not just easier to install, but they actually cover the whole screen, so it's much more protective. And the 12 was also the first phone to have MagSafe, which is wildly convenient for being able to mount your phone and charge it in the car. By the way, this is a much longer format video than I'm used to doing, so let me know if you'd like to see more like this or if you think it should be split up into shorter videos. This is my iPhone 12 mini. It's the phone I got a couple months after it released, and you probably shouldn't buy this phone. I had said for years that if Apple made a phone that was roughly the same shape and size as the old iPhone 5S, and it was blue, and it performed well and had a good camera, I would buy it. And lo and behold, in 2020, Apple released the iPhone 12 mini. In my experience, most people who end up with a mini get it because they miss the shape and size of the old iPhone 5S or SE, or even the iPhone 8. They just want to get a smaller phone. But for most people, the iPhone 13 mini is a much better deal than the iPhone 12 mini right now. The iPhone 12 mini is a bit infamous for having pretty bad battery life. And that's because when this came out, Apple put their most powerful processor in the iPhone 12 mini, but they had to shrink the battery down in order to fit it in there. So that powerful chip sucks up the battery very, very quickly. It's not as bad as the new iPhone SE, but it's still not great. It gets about 10 hours of battery life, which is pretty good, but it's the long-term battery life of the phone that really doesn't last. For reference, I've had this phone for about 2 years and I'm at 82% maximum capacity, which is a little bit less than you would expect. You can get a pre-owned iPhone 12 mini for $479. It'll have 64 gigs of storage, but for $599, you could get an iPhone 13 mini, which will have about 50% more battery, twice as much storage at 128 gigs, and way better night mode on the camera. But regardless, if you choose to get a 12 mini or a 13 mini, you will be one of the elite for being an iPhone mini owner. Coming up through the list, the iPhone 13 and 14 are remarkably similar to each other. And you might look at the $100 price difference between the two and say, why would I waste my money on the 14? But the 14 does have a few extra features that might be a game changer for you. One of the most obvious examples of that is the battery life. The iPhone 13 gets about 15 hours of battery life, but the iPhone 14 gets 20 hours of battery life. That's 25% more. So if you're a big battery user, that alone could be worth $100 to you. It did get several other features though. It got car crash detection, which is where the iPhone can use its microphones and its accelerometer and GPS to detect if you're in a car crash, and then automatically call an ambulance unless you tell it that you're okay. It did also get the satellite SOS feature, so if you're the kind of person who often finds yourself off the grid where you have no cell service and you're worried you might take a fall or something like that, it has the ability to connect to satellites to contact the nearest emergency services to get you some help. Another feature that the 14 got is way, way better repairability, because now you can actually remove the back glass of the phone and repair that rather than having to laser it off or dip it in liquid nitrogen. One other feature that the iPhone 14 got is eSIM. Now, we've already had eSIM. The iPhone XS was the first iPhone that had eSIM capability, which will let you have 2 phone numbers on one phone. You could have one on the physical SIM card, one on the eSIM. But on the iPhone 14, they switched completely to eSIM with no physical SIM card slot, which seems kind of weird, but that enables them to have 10 phone numbers on a single phone. So I don't know who would use that, but you know who you are. But if none of those features seem like they'd be worth an extra $100 to you, then you'll be completely happy with the iPhone 13. Now, as much as I wish Apple kept making the mini iPhones, the iPhone 14 Plus was a pretty welcome addition to the lineup. It's a really good way to get a Pro Max size 6.7-inch display without paying Pro Max money. Another benefit of the 14 Plus is that because it's a bigger phone, it also has a bigger battery. It actually has the longest battery life out of any iPhone. It gets 24 hours of continuous playback time. Even the 14 Pro Max only gets 23 hours. So if you're the kind of person who, no matter what phone you get, you're always going through the battery way too fast, the iPhone 14 Plus is probably for you. That being said, if you're looking at the iPhone 14 Plus just for the screen size, then you might actually consider going for the iPhone 12 Pro Max, which is a little bit older, so it won't be supported as long, but you get the same size screen and you get much more flexibility with the camera because you get that 2.5 times zoom. All right, let's talk about the Pro iPhones. If you're looking for these, you're probably looking for the triple cameras or the stainless steel chassis, or let's be honest, the word Pro on the box. We'll start off by looking at the non-Max Pro iPhones. If you want to get the triple cameras and the stainless steel and all that, but at the lowest price possible, the iPhone 11 Pro is probably your choice. It's about $489 to get it pre-owned and certified, which is a pretty good deal considering what you get. It has been on the older side, so you won't get software updates for as long, and the processor's a little bit slower. And although the camera is pretty good, it's got nothing on the newer generations. But it does have a pretty good 5.8-inch OLED display, and at $489, it's pretty hard to beat. The iPhone 12 Pro is kind of a strange middle ground here. When it came out, it had the exact same camera system as the regular iPhone 12, but with the addition of the 2x zoom lens. That's because in 2020, Apple decided to save their larger sensor and better 2.5 zoom camera for the 12 Pro Max, which we'll talk about in a minute. but the price for the 12 Pro is pretty good. It's $649 to get it pre-owned, which is $150 more than the 11 Pro, but you do get a lot more features for that money. You get the MagSafe compatibility, you get a much brighter OLED display, you're also getting that squared off design, which does make it more durable, and the screen protectors are much better and actually cover the whole screen. And although it's not quite the upgrade you would get with the Pro Max, the 12 Pro camera is still a massive upgrade from the iPhone 11 Pro. And the next phone up to have a 2x zoom camera is $350 more. So it really is kind of the best middle ground for most people. The iPhone 13 Pro is a substantial upgrade from the iPhone 12 Pro. Not only did the camera get better, but they also made huge advancements in battery life that year. But I can go ahead and tell you, if you're buying it new, the 13 Pro is probably not the right choice, because the iPhone 14 Pro is the exact same price at the moment at $999. But if you do find a really good deal for a used iPhone 13 Pro, it's a great phone and I'm sure you'll be happy with it. Every iPhone up until this year has had a 12 megapixel camera, but the iPhone 14 Pro got a 48 megapixel camera. And when you bend that down to 12 megapixels, it gets way better low light performance than the iPhone 13 Pro. Or if you take a picture in ProRes mode in broad daylight, it can take absurdly high resolution photos. And you do get all the benefits that the whole iPhone 14 lineup gives you, like the ability to have 10 phone numbers on one phone or satellite SOS capability. But the 14 Pro also gets an insane battery increase. It gets 20 hours of battery life as opposed to 15 on the iPhone 13 Pro. One thing you should consider though is while the 14 and 14 Plus got the boost in upgrade ability by removing the back glass, the 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max did not get that upgrade. All right, let's talk about the Pro Maxes. The iPhone 11 Pro Max is the cheapest large-size phone at $529 pre-owned. For that price, you get all the benefits of the iPhone 11 Pro, but with a great 6.5-inch OLED display. It also gets pretty solid battery life. It gets about 10.5 hours because of the larger size. And of course, you get the same camera versatility as the iPhone 11 Pro. Now, the 12 Pro Max is a very different story from the iPhone 11 Pro Max because, like I said, Apple saved their larger sensor and better zoom camera for the Pro Max in 2020. So the 12 Pro Max gets a significantly larger main sensor than the 11 Pro Max, as well as a 2.5 times optical zoom camera. It also gets a noticeably better 12 hours of battery life, and it costs $829, which is definitely more in the Pro Max range of money. But for that price, you're getting the MagSafe compatibility, the squared off design, and like I said, if you're in the market for a 14 Plus, you might actually consider getting a 12 Pro Max instead. Coming up to the 13 and 14 Pro Max, it's kind of the same story as with the regular Pros. The 13 Pro Max doesn't make much sense at all to buy right now if you're getting it brand new at least, because it costs the exact same $1,100 as the 14 Pro Max. So with these, you're getting all the same benefits as the 13 and 14 Pro, but with a massive 6.7-inch OLED display. The 14 Pro Max gets an insane 23 hours of battery life, so just 1 hour less than the 14 Plus, while the 13 Pro Max only gets about 17 hours. Not to mention the 14 Pro Max gets all the benefits of the 14 lineup, like the crash detection, the SOS, and the 10 eSIMs. So hopefully this video was helpful. Hopefully it helped you figure out what features are important to you in an iPhone and therefore which phone will suit you best. I'll go ahead and leave the spreadsheet link down below, so let me know if you have any questions. And Apple is rumored to release a 15-inch MacBook Air this year, so if you'd like to see a video on that, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time.